Michaela's boyfriend suddenly walked into the house while I was reading in the living room, holding 2 bags and a box. I wondered what he was doing at our house with that much luggage. Just before I could ask, Michaela and my parents walked into the living room. Right there, they crushed me completely with the words they said to me.
You have to leave the house. Michaela's boyfriend needs somewhere to stay before they get married and move to the States.
I was shocked to my bones. They were kicking me out for Michaela's boyfriend. I burst into tears. I pleaded with them that I had nowhere to go, but they didn't care. Michaela walked away and returned with my things. That night, I was kicked out of the house. It was a tough period for me. My twin sister and I have always been treated differently from a very young age. Now, I wasn't ugly, but I agree that I'm not as pretty as my twin. You see, even though we are twins, we aren't identical twins. She had long, healthy hair, longer lashes, pretty face, and the perfect body. During our childhood years, it was obvious who my parents' favorite was. There was a time when they were invited to a party, and my sister and I were around 10 years of age at the time. The invitation, though, stated that they had to come alone or bring only one more person. We were all in the living room when my parents were discussing what to do. They wanted to go with us, but doing the invitation stated that all 4 of us couldn't go.
Well, we can only bring one of them, so should we take Michaela? She's more presentable as our child.
Right? I was thinking the same. Michaela, would you like to go with us?
As expected, she agreed to go with them. I sat a little distance away from them, watching as they discussed happily, forgetting about me. 2 days later, they left for the party, leaving me all alone in our big house without food. I was forced to eat just bread, as I couldn't find anything else. They returned home very late at night, my dad carrying a sleeping Michaela in his arms. I ran to give them a hug, happy they were finally home. However, my parents brushed me aside after a brief hug and went upstairs. Feeling sad, I went up to my room to sleep. When we became teenagers, my introverted side began to show. I still think that I only became introverted, though, because of how I was always treated and left out of things by my family. I had no friends, so I was always home after school. However, Michaela had a lot of friends. My parents always ensured to buy her everything she requested. Whenever we went out shopping, Michaela was allowed to get whatever she wanted, while I was only ever given scraps that my parents selected. Due to how good Michaela always looked and how lavishly she spent, people got attracted to her and wanted to befriend her. On our 15th birthday, my parents wished a happy birthday to my sister first. From my room where I sat crying, I could hear their happy voices in the living room. I remained in my room until noon, not eating or speaking. Later, I began to hear noises in the house. I couldn't help but wonder what was going on. My door opened, and my dad poked his head in. A grin appeared on my face, as I thought he was there to wish me a happy birthday.
Leave the house for a few hours. We're throwing a party for Michaela and her friends, and she doesn't want you around the house. I left the back door open for you.
However, my joy got caught short when he said. I was dumbfounded. He left immediately after he told me that, and I could feel my heart folding. How could he do that to me? While I was thinking about it, the door opened again to reveal my mom.
Did your father not tell you to leave? Get the hell up from that bed.
Hearing her scream, I sprang up and dashed out of the bed, my hair a mess. I went out through the back of the house into the street. Since I hadn't eaten all day, I got so weak after walking aimlessly for a long time. When I could barely walk anymore, I was forced to sit on the cold ground. I remained there, hungry and tired until late into the night. I thought Michaela must have finished her party, so I managed to return home. Just then, my parents also drove into the compound.
What are you doing here? Your sister's friends are still here. You can't go in.
I was confused. Why can't I go in just because my sister and her friends were in? That night, I didn't keep quiet. I fired back at them, telling them I was going to go in because I had as much rights as Michaela. However, that angered my parents. They told me I should be lucky I was born together with my sister. According to them, an ugly girl like me didn't have a place in their lives, and I should know my place. Because of our argument, I was forced to sleep outside the house, in the freezing cold, on an empty stomach. This went on until we finally finished high school. When it was time for college, Michaela was allowed to go to an expensive college which she'd always dreamed about attending. I wanted to go with her, but Michaela refused. She didn't want anyone to associate her with me. My parents also said I didn't deserve to attend a school as expensive as that, so I was left to go to a less popular and cheap school. Things got worse for me when my parents refused to get me important things I needed at college. I was forced to borrow from others while my sister got everything. In my second year, I got a part-time job. I couldn't afford to beg from others anymore. I hid it from my parents, and with the money I got from it, I settled some bills my parents refused to take care of. 3 years later, we finally finished. I studied medicine while my sister studied business. Once we were done, my parents helped my sister start up her clothing line and also her cosmetics business. It was hard for me to undertake my residency program after college, as most hospitals were discriminating in terms of the college we attended. Mine was too local, so they didn't want to take me in. I tried for a year, and during that period, my sister's business flourished. I was forced to go to her for help. Since she'd become influential, I thought she could put in words for me with her friends and help me start the program in a good hospital. But my sister refused, saying,
"You won't ever become a doctor. Stop trying now that you still can. I won't waste my time helping a miserable fellow. Leave my sight."
I was shocked by her response. How could she say that to her sister? I tried to beg her more, but she had her guards throw me out of her company, causing me to have a bruise on my knee. I went home in tears and told my parents about her behavior. Now, I wonder why I did that. As usual, they supported her and asked me to take my miserable self away from their faces. I got a full-time job and forgot about my residency program for a while. A year later, we both got into relationships, mine being my first. One day, my parents asked me to bring him over. I was happy, thinking they were finally interested in me. On the evening of the next day, I brought my boyfriend home. I was surprised to see my sister do the same. While eating dinner, my parents and sister out on their usual behavior, comparing both men and saying how much of a loser my boyfriend was to be in a relationship with an ugly lady.
He's ugly and poor too. As they say, birds of the same feathers flock together.
They all burst into laughter. When it got too much to handle, my boyfriend was forced to stand up and leave, their loud laughter following him. I stood up, tears in my eyes, and rushed after him. I tried to apologize on their behalf, but he wasn't having it. Right there, he broke up with me. I tried to hold him, but he pushed me off and stormed off. I felt a rush of shame, anger, and disappointment within me. I confronted my parents and Michaela after her boyfriend left, but only received more mockery in return. With my boyfriend gone, I focused more on just working. 2 months later, Michaela's boyfriend suddenly walked into the house while I was reading in the living room, holding 2 bags and a box. I wondered what he was doing at our house with that much luggage. Just before I could ask, Michaela and my parents walked into the living room. Right there, they crushed me completely with the words they said to me.
You have to leave the house. Michaela's boyfriend needs somewhere to stay before they get married and move to the States.
I was shocked to my bones. They were kicking me out for Michaela's boyfriend. I burst into tears. I pleaded with them that I had nowhere to go, but they didn't care. Michaela walked away and returned with my things. That night, I was kicked out of the house. It was a tough period for me. I spent 2 weeks going from one cheap hotel to the other before I was finally able to get a small apartment. That act of theirs prompted me to want to do better for myself. I worked harder and connected myself with influential people. With their help, I was able to start my residency program. It lasted for 2 years. Due to how fast I learned and how great I proved myself to be, I was retained as a doctor in the hospital, earning unbelievably high. Not for once did I think about my family throughout those years. I was more concerned about my growth. 3 years later, while in my mansion with a few friends, I was told that a woman who looked like me was begging to see me. I knew immediately that it was Michaela, but I wondered how she found me and what she wanted from me. I asked them to let her in. When I saw Michaela, my jaw dropped open. She was dressed in tattered clothes, her hair looking like it hadn't been combed for years. She was in tears. My friends and I sat and listened to her. According to her, she got deceived by her boyfriend, the one they sent me out for. He made her invest in a scam project and took off with all her money. Not only that, he also got my parents to invest in it, thinking they'd gain triple the amount afterward. My sister had to take loans too. When my father heard about him absconding with their money, he was hit with a heart attack and died. My mother fainted, and as she fell, she hit her head hard on the tiled floor, resulting in a brain injury that rendered her paralyzed with all her memory lost. Michaela had to sell all her businesses to pay for her loans. However, even after that, she still had quite a lot of debt to pay. She came to plead for forgiveness and my help, as they desperately needed it. I was elated hearing that, and I didn't fail to express it to her. I made her recall all the hardships they made me go through from a tender age, and how I had to work extremely hard to get myself to where I am. She held my legs, crying and begging, but I wasn't having it. I had my security guards throw her out of my house, just like she did when I went to get help from her many years ago. 2 days later, Michaela came to my office, still begging. I threatened to have her arrested if she came again before having her thrown out. A week later, as I arrived home in my car, I met her in front of my gate. I could tell that she was desperate when she pulled a knife on me and demanded that I give her some money or else she would stab me. She said that it was the least that I could do, since I owed her since we were family. Unfortunately for her, though, she was far too weak, and I was able to overpower her and disarm her before she could even try to hurt me. Once I got the knife away from her, I beat her up. I know that I probably shouldn't have, but after all the times that she and my parents had mistreated me and abused me over the years, this was finally my chance to get even with her. Once she was unconscious, I called the police and had her arrested for trespassing and threatening me with a weapon. The police dragged her away, and she ended up spending the next 5 years in prison. While there, my mother was sent to live in a nursing home since there was no one around to take care of her. From what I hear, the home that she was sent to is notorious for being among the worst places to live, and I have no doubt that she is quite miserable there. As for my sister, I have no doubt that she will have an even harder time getting money once she is released from prison. She was already in debt, but with a criminal history, she will have an even harder time. Personally, after all that they put me through, I think they have gotten off lightly. Thanks for watching.